Hey, everybody, welcome to Talkin Fire, where we talk all things fire. My name is Dean Babineau. Our guest today is Zane Riggs. Zane is from a major metropolitan fire department, Southeast United States. Hi, Zane.
Hey, Dean. How are you, buddy?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, thank you for being here. Second go round. So we recorded Zane a few weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago now, and Zane did the right thing, shared it with his organization, and us being a new podcast, they were just a little leery about identifying the city, and I think that's fair. I know it's fair, and I think you did the right thing, but you wanted to come back.
Yeah.
So you
Yep.
must have had an okay time
Oh,
the
yeah.
last time we chatted,
Absolutely. I really enjoyed the conversation for sure.
as did I. And I don't think leaving the city name out of our conversation is going to take away from the message, because I think the messages you shared are. Um, they applied anywhere, right? Big, small, doesn't matter. They applied everywhere, and I think that you know, again, I can speak to your credibility because of how I know you and the people I know you through. So I don't think we need to even have your city to lend credibility, other than saying that it's a major fire department and it's got a whole lot of people, a whole lot of companies, and you've been on a number of them. So why don't we just start there? So you've been on the job. You're a captain. You've been on the job about 14 years almost, right?
Correct. Mhm.
So how do you end up on the fire department? Like, how does that happen for you?
There were a number of things that happened that kind of spelled it out for me. I was introduced to the fire service at a young age. I grew up in the inner city. It burned a lot back in the day. I got to experience a close friend's house that burned. Um, there was a historic fire station right down the street from my house that I would visit regularly. And then as I got a little bit older, my grandparents moved into a community, and if you walked through their backyard, you wound up at a particular fire station. And so I started hanging around there. And so fire service, no family in the fire service, but for me, it was always visible. It was always
Hmm.
kind of around. And I think the first time I ever stepped foot in a fire station, and I've heard other people say this too, it was like, this is what I want to do. This is this is a career that I want to go after. And then there was a long road to it, but I tell you what, it all pointed right to the fire service for me.
So, I mean, growing up in the city, I did not grow up in the city. I didn't. There's no firehouse walking distance. The house I grew up in is the house I live in now, and there's no firehouse and walking distance, anything like that. But I hear a lot of city folks say that, and do you think those firehouses become kind of, at least then, were maybe the center of some community there?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a number of them, and even one that I worked at early on in my career was in the middle of a neighborhood, and all the kids knew where it was. All the residents knew where it was. It was very community oriented. And, again, for me, this was a firehouse built in the early 1900s. It's beautiful to look at. The architecture is really pretty. The neighborhood, it's right in the middle of the neighborhood I grew up in. And back in the 90s, they were a busy engine, single engine, um, but a lot of fires, a lot of fire duty back then. There was a major thoroughfare that was just two houses down, and they would go down that street routinely, and I'd hear them coming, and me and my friends would run down to watch them drive by. So yeah, it was definitely part of the community, and that's where I learned to be a part of the community when I served in particular firehouses.
Yeah, I think that's, they talk about that sense of community, and I do think that the cities maybe have that up over the towns in some way, in the fact that people can walk in, drop in, maybe some of the neighborhood folks stop in all the time, and maybe sometimes that can be a nuisance. But I think that it's much better. That's nice. I mean, even where I was, it was always nice if somebody wanted to stop in and ring the doorbell and say hi. It's appreciated, So a little different feel, but that same kind of thing. So you're hanging out at the firehouses, and then you kind of just get lucky and take an exam and get on the fire department. How does that
And,
happen for
and
you?
well, no, not necessarily. The journey was a little longer than I would have liked it to have been. As I got to know guys on the fire department, I noticed that this particular station that I started hanging out at was slow, and I met some other guys that were a little busier company, so I started going down there, and I met some guys from another company that was in the middle of then the ghetto, and I started hanging out there. And that's when I was like, really like, okay, I found what I want to do and where I want to be. Um, but the journey was a lot longer. I went to EMT school right out of high school. Went and got my fire science degree. After that, it was tough getting on the fire department. I worked in the our 911 center here for a number of years, for about 5.5, 6 years, and then from there, I tested and got hired. So I tested once before and didn't get hired, and then the second time I tested, I got hired.
That seems to be, at least in the people that I know, that seems to be one of those things, right? Like there's a rite of passage in some way that you got to start maybe somewhere else. It's a little different up here in the Northeast now. I mean, now it seems like people are getting hired at 19. They're getting their EMT and they're getting a full time fire job because there's a lot more jobs than there used to be. Back in the early 2000s, at least around here, there weren't any jobs. I mean, they were all very, very competitive. But a lot of people seem to have started that path where maybe they went into corrections or they went into 911. They went into something not entry level. I mean, something that's a great profession in and of itself, but they went somewhere
A
else.
lot of private ambulance,
Yep.
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, just that, and that's great. I mean, you can learn some things doing that. I think that sometimes we underestimate how much you can learn, either shagging private ambulance or working 911. I mean, I dispatched and did the 911 thing for a while, per diem early on. That's the same reason, you get to hear the other side, the other callers. So that's some cool stuff. So then you get hired and you guys run your own drill school
We do. Yes.
because you got, 1,500 or so, 1,800, 1,400,
Right.
whatever we want to say for a number. But you got a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
So you run your own drill school. So you go through drill school and then you end up on an engine. And I think that's something that I remember from our first conversation really well, because 13 years on the job, you have said you maybe have spent 4 or 5 tours on a truck. Other than that, it's all been engine work.
Right.
What was it like those first couple of companies?
The first company I got assigned to was a busy engine company a little bit outside of our downtown area, and I was elated that I got sent there. Again, it was just the run volume was high, and so I was really really glad to be there. I had a goal in mind. I had a particular area of the city that I wanted to be in, and so after a couple of years of being in my first assignment, I got the opportunity to bid to this inner city company, a historic engine company, extremely busy, in the middle of a then in the middle of a blighted neighborhood. Things have changed quite a bit since then, but blighted neighborhood, all the typical inner city things that go along with that: fire duty, shootings, those sorts of things. I had to get there, and so after a couple of years of my first assignment, I got that opportunity, and that's where I went, and I spent about 6 years at that engine company.
That's, so obviously the city you're in is I mean, I won't even say up and coming. I mean, it's growing, at least the metro area, the city and the metro area are growing, and things are getting busier and busier. So when you talk about a busy company, by today's standards, what are you talking a busy company is going to do in a year?
So the run numbers, as they have in most places, in most cities, have just increased. The current engine company that I'm on now, I can speak to that we're going to make about 5,400 runs this year. We made 490 runs last month. I think currently we're the busiest engine in the city, but that's only because just some things have changed in other places where they've added equipment that may take the place of that engine company. So they're running, instead of sending an engine out,
Yep.
they've worked different things to take the load off of that. But it's an extremely busy department. The run volume is extremely high. There's honestly nowhere to hide anymore. Few places here and there you can get away with making much less than that. But overall, it's a high volume city for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because everywhere is getting like that. I mean, you're right. Everywhere's getting busier and busier, and it used to be that there was a tipping point in someone's career where they could maybe go into what we call a retirement house, right, where things would maybe be a little slower. And there are fewer and fewer of those companies, fewer departments like that. One of the departments around here, people love to work there per diem because you could go there for 24 hours and maybe do 2.5 or 3 runs like it was nothing. And now they're doing 7 runs a day, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but when the runs to the hospital and the nearest hospital is an hour away, I mean, it adds up. It's not as easy as it used to be, and I think as these companies are getting busier and busier, for me, in a whole different conversation some other time, is about how the impact that's going to have on the workworce, right? Because you sound like someone who likes to be busy.
I do.
Now,
It's
right
what I
now,
enjoy. Yeah, yeah, it's what I enjoy. You know, this is where I'm assigned now, so I don't have a choice but to go in every third day and make that run volume. But in the past when I was on the back, and would travel to come to slow companies, I would pace. Like, I mean, it's just, look, if I'm going to be there for 24 hours, let's just do it.
yeah,
I can come home and do nothing. I don't really want to go into the firehouse and do nothing. That just doesn't interest me. And look, the sleep deprivation, it's taking its toll for sure. The constant up and down, the spike in all the chemicals,
hmm
and then it's Medicrun, and also, yeah, yeah, for sure, it takes its toll. But right now, it's still what I want to do, and I know that it's likely that I won't want to have that kind of run volume forever. Maybe I will. I'm not sure, but it's still what I enjoy right now. Just makes the 24 hours go by.
sure, yeah. I mean, right, because if not, I mean, if it's slow, it's slow, and you may right, like you said, you don't want to just be at a house pacing back and forth.
And I'm always of the mind that your total run volume has got to increase your fire duty. I mean, generally speaking, it
Right.
doesn't always spill that out, but usually the busier a company is, the greater your odds are of having
hmm
some fire duty. So I always want to increase my odds when I can.
Yeah, sure. Right. Like you said, especially now. I mean, and there will come maybe come a tipping point. I mean, it all depends, right? I mean, you got 6 years before, so you got 19 in the retirement system, and you never know what that means to people, right? I mean, something different to everybody. Some people want to get to a retirement house and ride out a little bit. Some people want to be busy, 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 and then leave. Like that's a thing too. Stay as busy as long as you can. But I think that's a testament to right work ethic. Most people now, I think, want to be somewhere they're doing something. If we think about why I think most people get in the fire service, it's to make a difference, right? It's to do something. And like you said, no matter what, if your total volume goes up, your do something is going to go up, right? Your helping people is going to go up. Your whatever it is that makes you tick. Why you said I want to be a firefighter. If your total run volume goes up, your whatever it is, if you want to go cut people out of cars, the more calls you go to, the more
Yep.
that's going to happen.
Yep.
It is a numbers game.
Yep.
While we're talking about numbers games and calls, um, what do you got for memorable calls? And listen, that question it's important that I ask it that way because you actually made the first time you and I talked, you used that word. You used the word memorable and it stuck with me. And because they're not always good calls, they're memorable calls, and there's a difference. So while we're talking about calls and increasing calls, what do you got for memorable call?
Well, my most memorable to this point, um, was an apartment fire that we made. The year all of a sudden escapes me. I think 2021 maybe. But at any rate, I had gone to a busy engine company on the southeast side of the city to work with some guys I highly respected. We kind of had a plan to get to all go work together, and it worked out. Went to this busy engine company, and middle of the night, we get sent to an apartment fire in our first due. The info that was given was pretty obvious that we were going to a job. There were people reporting that they were trapped. Uh, so just a few minutes down the road, we get on the scene. There's fire blowing out of a third-story window. We get stretched, go up, do our thing, and it turns out that the people who called and said they were trapped were just in an adjacent apartment, kind of across the breeze, not even across the breezeway, across from the apartment that was involved in fire. So my captain at the time just had them shelter in place. We make our way into the apartment. He goes on in and down the hallway as I'm waiting for the hose line to get charged, and make my way down the hall to the fire room. No big deal fire wise. The smoke was banked about halfway down as I walked in upright, very little heat. And just as I opened the line, I heard him yell, mumble something behind me. And when I shut the line down, he was asking, "How do I get out?" Well, he had gone into the kitchen just off of the fire room, done a quick search, and found a child. He actually at the time thought it was a doll. And there was a split second where he thought to himself that that doll is it's bad. And he realized it was a child, picked it up and made his way out. We were the first new engine company. Other companies hadn't quite got up to where we were. They were on scene, but hadn't quite got up to where we were. So I made my way back down the hallway because I thought we talked about this before. We had no indication in this particular apartment that there were people trapped.
Right.
We didn't know. And as we pulled up, what was odd was there was no one in the parking lot. There weren't people pointing. It was odd. People weren't evacuating. It was just like there was nobody around.
Hmm.
I go back down the hallway just a little bit and turn into a bedroom on my right, and I think there's 3 or 4 kids laying on a mattress in the bedroom. And so the fire's blacked out. I grabbed one of the kids just as somebody else was coming up. I handed the guy the nozzle, grabbed a kid, and left out and was telling other people that were coming up, "Hey, there's kids trapped in this room here." And so we were just kind of thrown into a situation. We had no idea going into it what it was going to be. And years down the road, I mean, long legal process for the people involved, and all contact with the DA, and it went on for a very long time, and it wore on us for sure.
Sure. I mean, so you get there, and like you said, you knew it was a fire. Like that was easy. When you turned out, and if I, and again, because we've talked kind of about this already once, if memory serves me, you had a quick turnout time. Your gate time was real fast.
Yeah, and it always stands out. Anytime
Yeah,
I tell the story, it stands. I vividly remember. We have different tones. I think most people do medic tones and then fire tones. The fire tones went off, started rattling off companies. I vividly remember throwing the covers off. My buddy was sleeping in the bunk next to me. I remember him sprinting past. I'm behind him. Captain's in his own room. He comes running out. We're turned out and down the ramp in absolutely no time. That to me is what people should expect. That's what they deserve. That's still the way that my engine company now does things because of the examples that were set, before me. But it was a very quick turnout, and probably a 2.5, 3 minute response time tops.
right. So I mean, and that can matter. I mean, that can matter, right? I mean, those, of the 4 or 5, there was only one fatality, right? If I remember.
Correct.
So,
There was one. It was an infant in the fire room. Yeah.
so I mean, if you think about that, in that case, minutes mattered. If everyone had dragged their feet that night, and if everybody was whatever gassed from the day and just didn't, I don't want to say didn't care, but just didn't have it, didn't bring it, it could have had a very different outcome, right? So
This young man that my captain grabbed did not have much time. Did not have much time. So yeah, it absolutely made a difference.
So, and then, to think like that you had reports of people trapped, people saying we're in the building and trapped, but then you identify who those people are. So you said it was kind of an odd scenario, right? Because you pull up, there's no activity outside. There's not like that bunch of people, like you said, pointing, yelling. And then you confirm the people that called and said we're trapped. you talk to them. They're confirmed. It's these people. And then, you know, you get the line in place and you go to open up, and he's, I'm going to conduct a quick search. And I think, you know, we talk a lot about search, and search is critical. It's critical that we do it all the time because you just don't know. You know, not everyone calls and says, "Yeah, I just came out of my apartment that was on fire," or "I just got out of the house." You know, sometimes the caller or the person that's trapped in the fire compartment, they can't call. You know, these kids are unresponsive; they can't call.
Right.
So, you know, had things gone differently, they would have gone differently. And I think it's probably a testament to, you know, the people that captain worked for, right? Like, because it very rare is it a first generation thing, you know, whatever it is, good or bad. Very rarely is it that we've invented something. It's typical that we've grown, we've built something upon something we already heard, you know. So
Right.
this captain probably was doing good work because the captains before him did good work, and that's how he grew up in the fire service doing good work. That's how you, like you said, that's how one of the things you talk about with your company is that quick turnout time, because it does matter because of the experiences you've had. So that's going to lead me to my next kind of thing here. I want to talk about mentoring, because really that's what that is, right? I mean, that's whether we consider that, whether we think about that as mentoring. I think when we set an example for someone else, in a way, we're mentoring. Mentoring is maybe a little more formal, but in a way, we're mentoring. So your department has a couple different mentoring programs. The first one I want to talk about is the one you do with the probies, with the new folks coming in. So what's so unique about what you folks do with them when they're coming through drill school?
So we have a formal mentoring program. It started probably about 5 years ago now, and I took it over probably a year and a half ago now. Um, the guy that started it had some other things going on, and he's implemented several other things that the department uses. But the mentoring part of it, he handed over to me. It was an honor to get it. And so what we do is towards the end of their stay in the fire academy, we go down and speak with them and let them know here's what's going to happen. We have a mentoring program. It's they're firefighters, they're all kind of different people that are involved in it. You are going to be assigned a particular firefighter, captain, engineer, whatever it may be, and that is going to be your mentor. You're to keep in touch with them. It's a two-way street. They need to be in touch with you, but they're given someone that they can depend on, ask questions right out of the academy. Whether they use it or not, again, it's kind of up to them, but the program is there. It's formal, it's recognized, it's supported by the department. All the mentors have to take a class. Um, can I teach you how to be a mentor? Not necessarily, but again, because the program is formal and recognized, it's mandatory that we have to have a class to say here's kind of how we go about doing things. And so it's been a really cool program for me. It keeps me involved with like you said, with probies. I get to go down and see the seat I sat in and relive those moments of being right out, getting ready to graduate and being excited and all that sort of stuff. And a couple of close friends of mine, guys that I highly respect, two other captains are involved with the program as well. And so um, it's rolling. It's good. It's going good.
So when so that way that person coming in, that probie's got like a connection, right? Does that help build their connection with the department?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes people are afraid to ask those what they think is a stupid question. They're not sure how to go about shift change things. They're not sure about what classes should I take. There's just a lot of uncertainty when you come out, and there's it's still floating around out there. The thing of keeping your mouth shut and that sort of thing, and just come in and work hard, which is come in and work hard. Yes, I don't believe in the keeping your mouth shut thing. But if that's what they want to do, they have a mentor to reach out to. They've got
Mm-hmm.
somebody they can text. They've got somebody that they can call and say, "Hey, listen, hey, I'm going to station so and so tomorrow. Like shift change." If they have no fire experience, it's really valuable. Now, because of the size of our city and because it's a destination city, we get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that have been firefighters elsewhere. And do they need that sort of, mentoring? Probably not, but they are new to the city at least. They're new to our culture, so it's there for them.
Sure. I mean, even somebody coming in, right, could make a big mistake day one. If you're supposed to bring donuts on day one and you don't, people are going to remember that. And is that critical? It's not critical, but I mean, like, it'd be nice to know that, right?
It
It'd
can
be
get
nice
you a
if they,
nickname really real
yeah,
quick.
well, that's just it, right? Sometimes it's just about keeping yourself out of a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
So, do they end up? They don't typically end up on the company their mentors on, right? I mean, just based on the volume, based on the
Not
size of
not
the
the not the
organization.
company, no, but in the area. So one of the things that we worked on when we took the program over was one of the things that we heard is not necessarily negative, but it was difficult for mentors and the mentees to keep contact when they were on different shifts and in different areas.
Okay,
One of the things that we worked on was to try and make those assignments line up, same shift, same district, and that way there's more one-on-one interaction there. Now our program is not it's not performance based. I know Miami has a performance based program, a wonderful program where they have to show proficiency in these things. We have a probationary period, but our mentor program isn't like, hey, let's go out here and start the saw up or show me how to stretch this line. It's not that. Although if that's how the individual mentor wants to do it, they can.
sure, sure. And I guess that makes sense if they're in the district and if they're on the same shift. At least if they have a question about, especially about culture. I mean, a city the size of yours, I'm sure culture. The department has a culture, and
Yeah.
then each area, battalion, division, whatever's probably got a culture. Every shift has got a little bit of a culture. So I guess it is beneficial if they're tied to someone that's in that same area, that might know some of the players on their company in case they're, especially if they're struggling. If things are going well, it's probably a little easier. But if they're struggling for whatever reason, it probably is definitely really beneficial to have someone that might know, the some of the backstory on the struggle
Yeah,
to help them
absolutely.
succeed, right? And
Just having that
so,
cup of coffee, that occasional breakfast, maybe, or whatever, that occasional one-on-one time, it pays dividends. Absolutely.
so you've got another mentoring program that involves the high school kids, and that one. So, right, we think about this, whether we know it or not, right? You talked about first, we talked about different companies. You said highly respected guys more than once. Those those are probably all kind of informal mentors to you. Some have been formal mentors, but majority are informal mentors to you. And then there's this mentoring program at the drill school that you're a big part of, right? That you help oversee. But then there's this program with the high school kids, and talk a little bit about that because that was interesting too. I mean, like it before it just talks about it speaks to the volumes or the volume in which your department feels as though that mentoring is important, and not only the department like formal, but informal among the people that work there, and the value they see in mentoring, which I don't know that we always think of as value, and I also don't think we always think of our relationships as mentor mentee, but there are probably a lot more mentor mentee relationships in life than we think of. So, what's the story with the high school program?
Started a number of years ago. We decided to get a program together just to interact with the local high school students. And so this mentoring program came about 2019, 2019, 2018, when we first started this program. We would go into the high schools and there would be the topics just varied. We would try to figure out what career they wanted to pursue and then help guide them towards whatever they needed to do for that, the classes that they needed to take or the things they needed to seek out. We were just an extra resource for them. We didn't want them to have any limitations. And so we were in the schools physically and we would host different topics. We one time had our local credit union come down and talk to them about finances. We talked about, again, different careers. They always wanted to know about our career. So if that's what they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk about, what they wanted to discuss, then we would. And again, it was just us coming into the schools and being that extra resource for them. And then we have things outside the school. We do creek cleanups. We do volunteering at local food pantries and those sorts of things. And we interact, excuse me, we interact with the high schools. We have them come out and participate because a lot of the seniors need those community hours. And so we provide that for them. We give them community hours so that they can take back and help them graduate. And then a number of years ago, we started a scholarship program. We have a lot of community partners that donate to us. So the thing about our program is we do not get in any funding from our fire department. We are a nonprofit organization. We have community partners that come in and help us.
Nice.
And then again, like I said, a number of years ago, we started providing a small scholarship for seniors. And so again, just that extra resource, being part of the community like a fire department is supposed to be.
Yeah, and I guess that's what it is, right? Like, because if you think about what got you into the fire service, or interested in the fire service 20 years ago, more, but was that community firehouse? Was that, whether it was a quick walk down the street to the firehouse, the fire engine driving by, that connection to firefighters to the firehouse, and maybe some kids lack that ability to have that connection for whatever reason, and this brings that connection to them, and maybe even forces a little bit of a connection, where they feel more comfortable getting to that point. And are we, and not that it's a recruiting tool, but is it a connection tool, right? Like
Yeah,
like you
absolutely.
said, it allows the fire department to be connected back to the community, and I think that's really important, because it's something that we sometimes get caught up in, especially when you think about what we talked about earlier in the run volume. As the run volume goes up, people aren't sitting in front of the firehouse as much. They're not
Right.
sitting on the bumper. Bumper time, and bumper time's important. But if the company used to do, I don't know, 10 runs in a 24, and now it's doing 25 runs in a 24, there's no time sitting around waiting for the kid from the neighborhood to walk by.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody's ever really studied that. I mean, I'm willing to bet in some inner city areas that just that alone, the company getting busier, has had a negative impact. Because they're not available just for the community for whatever. And then I guess you got to think about what our real mission is and why do fire departments exist. We probably don't exist to sit around on the bumper and
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah.
talk to the neighborhood. Although that's a great thing, but that's probably not why we exist. But we do exist to be connected to the community. I think it's a testament to how the people in your department, because I don't want to say, although your department supports it, but it's outside of the department, this program, and I think that means the people inside your department care,
Right.
and
Agreed.
that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, especially in a big city department, because it's probably easy. It's probably easy in some places to not care. I mean, it's easy to not do the right thing. The wrong thing is always easy. The right
100%.
thing, the right thing is sometimes hard. It's not always hard, but it's sometimes hard. But the easy thing's not necessarily always a good thing. So let's see. So we talked about memorable call. We talked about kind of what got you in the fire service. Um, how about training? Let's talk about your training. So you went to EMT school right out of high school, and then like some people do, like I guess a lot of people do now. Um, and then you end up at the 911 center. So obviously there's some training there. Um, but then you get on the job. You get on the job at some point, mid 20s or whatever. And then how do you keep up? Like, what do you do? What's your training belief or your training strategy?
I find myself just being into the job. I'm so into the fire service. I've got, it's like families number one, families tops, and under that is for me the fire service. I don't have any major hobbies. I don't. I'm fortunate enough not to have a side job. Fire service. I just find myself being into the job. I do my best to go to conferences when I can. I've been to Andy Fredericks a couple of times. Been to the End of the Job conference out in Wichita a number of years ago. I try to stay dialed into the different fire service pages. There's some people doing some really cool things on social media. Can't buy into it all, but there's some wonderful Instagram pages out there. Um, my locker is full of books, and I just try to stay up to date. We were last shift. We were watching some of the UL studies on YouTube and going over some of those sorts of things and discussing. One of my guys was asking me about flowing, moving and flowing and that sort of thing. So just I try to stay dialed into the latest science, to the latest. Yeah, man, I love the fire service. So I'm always trying to pick up little nuggets from somewhere. We worked on last shift. I asked my guy, I was like, hey, when was the last time you practiced calling a mayday? And it had been a while. So we just went crawling around, nothing expansive, nothing crazy. We got in our gear and I, went in and did a quick search of a bedroom, and I threw a mattress on top of him and said, call a mayday. Um, so again, just for me, it's a passion. Um, it's easy for me to do. I have more of a hard time turning it off than I do turning it on.
Okay. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I'm obviously not a doctor, so I mean, I guess I don't know, but I don't think it's a bad thing. You clearly don't think it's a bad thing. Um, I think that's okay. I think that some people in some places think that's a bad thing. Well, you need to disconnect. And I have a friend that said that all the time. Like, you need to disconnect. You need to go. I said, why? I don't. I mean, I don't need to. I mean, I can, but I don't need to. And people don't need to. It's like you said before. It's okay to love the job. It's
So
okay.
I have learned what I will say to that is I spent a good number of my years spending my 2 days off wanting to get back to the firehouse. I have changed that,
Okay.
and fairly recently. There's nothing else I would rather be doing than being at home with my girls, my wife and two girls. Nothing else. We don't have to go anywhere, nothing. I'm completely comfortable being here with them. Number one. But there were some years there, especially when I was at a particular engine company, we were having so much fun where I was like, my 2 days were spent like, I can't wait to get back to the firehouse. And don't get me wrong, I want to get back to the firehouse Saturday, but I'm enjoying these 2 days off, and I'm not quite as where I was back then, where I was just, I cannot wait to get to the job. I've altered that a little bit because I wanted to be more present at home.
Yeah. And that's a good decision, right? Like, any decision's a good decision, but that's the way you want to live, and that's a good thing that you can not turn the passion off, because you don't need to turn the passion off. It's not an or statement; it's an and statement, right? Like,
Right.
you can be highly passionate and want to be home with your family,
Yeah.
or and want to golf and want to go on vacation. Like,
Mhm.
it's not. And so many people get hung up on that. It has to be or in life, where it has to be, well, I'm going to be passionate about the fire service. I can't do anything else. Or I'm not going to be. I'm either going to be passionate or I'm not going to be. And it's like, well, no, you can be passionate about the fire service and something else. And so that's a good thing, I guess, that we evolve as people, and we just make different changes, and that's cool. And so you've got a degree in fire science.
Mhm.
Your department promote that, or is that just you did that before
It,
you got
it- it's
on?
a percentage. It's an increase in percentage in your pay. Associates and bachelors, you get 3% for associates, 6% for bachelors. Um, and I mean, it helps in ways that you obviously you're putting forth effort. That's
Mm-hmm.
we see that and it comes into play at some points for sure. I was glad to have had it done. Yeah, I wasn't even on the fire department. That was a that was a 2 year degree. I think I stretched out to about 8 years. I could have had my doctorate by the time I got my fire science degree. And thank goodness, I'm grateful to my wife who encouraged me. It was like, will you please get that done? Um, Most of it I had prior to even getting on the job, and then I finished it up, a few years after I was on the job. I'm glad I got it done. Um, I get the bachelor's thing gets mentioned from time to time. I have zero interest in that at this point in my life, but kudos to those that do.
Yeah, it's So I, like you, I got my associates took a long time. Similar story, but I got to tell you, like I got a lot. I think I got a lot out of it doing it when I was older and doing it when I was on the job. There was a lot of things that I learned that I think I would have missed if I had done it right away.
I can see
Right?
that.
Like, yeah, I mean, if I wasn't on the fire department and got a degree in fire science, the way my path went, there's no way I would have done that. But if I had, I think I would have missed a lot of things because I wouldn't have been thinking about that last call we did or that training we did last month or that call the neighboring town had. I wouldn't have been thinking about that as I'm writing this paper or reading this thing or whatever, right? Commenting on a lot of stuff I did online, but I guess so. In a way, I found it beneficial to go back to school as an adult, and get a degree as an adult. And I've told a lot of folks that I think that it just makes, at least in our job, and for me, I don't know. I've met some people that got right out of high school, went and got a 4-year degree, then they got on the job, and I think by the time they're putting their degree to use, some of the stuff had already changed, some of the science had changed,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm sure it made their degree less relatable, not less valuable. I think there's still value to it, but they probably couldn't relate in the moment the things they were learning because they weren't also doing it. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that, I guess.
Yeah. No, I took the major fire science classes like the hydraulics and the fire behavior and building. I took those right out of the gate because I wanted to. I was excited to,
Hmm.
but I wasn't even on the job. I passed those classes, but hell, I didn't know how to apply them.
Right.
And so I wish I had been a little bit older and on the job when I took those classes so that I could have applied them. Again, by the time I got on, I was like, I don't even remember, most of the stuff that I could have applied.
So, um, do you have a mentor right now?
Yeah, for sure. I do. I have people that I have a small circle of close friends, very small circle. I'm an introverted person. Normally, I don't talk a whole lot unless I have to. So I have a small circle of friends, and yeah, absolutely, I have other guys that I kind of grew up around, but at this point, we're both captains. I can call him, and I recently did. Uh, Having a little bit of a lull here lately in morale, but that's part of it. But I called him up and was just running things by him like, hey, give me some advice here. Tell me what I'm doing. Tell me what I can do. That sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely. The captain that was in that apartment with me is
Hmm.
100% a mentor. I can call him whenever and get wonderful advice from him. Yeah, there are people that I can pick up the phone right now and trust and buy into everything that they tell me and know that the info they're giving me is they're shooting straight with me.
And that's probably that's a great place to be. I mean, I have a similar. I mean, I can tell you that I got a handful of people too. Like that's it, right? And that feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely does because one of the things that I've had to learn as I've gotten older is you're never alone in the way that you're feeling or the things that you're thinking. Whatever you're going through, whatever it is, you are not alone in that. There's somebody else there's another guy out there who's having a morale issue right now. Or there's somebody else that's going through a divorce or whatever the circumstances are. There's always somebody who is going through it or has been through it. And so having that ability to reach out to people and say, "Hey, what did you do when you were at this point in your career?" Or what's your advice for this scenario? It is a good feeling. And I'll say the other great feeling is I'm getting those calls from time to time and realizing that they respect me enough to reach out and say, "Hey, what would you?" As a matter of fact, I got a phone call today, earlier this afternoon, a guy saying, what do you think about this? What are my options here? And we had a good conversation and talked for a while. I don't know that I helped at all, but I myself am getting those phone calls now.
Yeah, and that's cool, right? Because again, when we think about the fact that everyone gets in the fire service to give back to some degree, that's it, right? To give back. That's another way to give back, right? Like people did that for you. People answered the phone for you. You're now answering the phone for somebody else. You'll continue to make those phone calls. You'll continue to receive those phone calls. It really is like it's just a good way to help each other out. And and you said it, like we're never alone in whatever it is. There is there are probably very few things in life that are left that nobody's experienced.
Yeah,
So right, and
yeah,
it's just about finding the right person that did it, that went through that too, and talking to them about it. You know, and I guess I mean they've got to be the right person. I mean you gotta and chances are in your handful of friends, we'll call it five just to make it easy. Those close people,
I think
right?
that's
That
a good
inner
number.
circle. It's a handful, right?
Yep.
So if if you call one of them, if they can't solve, fix, guide, whatever it is, if they can't do it, they know someone that can. So even that, right? Because they're in your circle, but they're also in somebody else's circle, presumably, right? Because we're
Right.
all in probably two circles like that.
Right.
So even if you call them and you say, hey, a guy in my company, whether going through divorce or going through this or going and struggling, what do you know somebody or do you? They're gonna say, yeah. What's his number? I'll have him call so and so on truck. This has got that same thing. They went through it 2 years ago.
And on
And
that topic, not to interrupt you, on that topic, I had an issue a number of years ago now and kind of put it out there. And Kyle Sampson, shout out to Kyle Sampson, Newport News. Um, Kyle got with me and said, I got a guy. Call Rick George. And shout out to Rick George. I still haven't got to shake his hand yet, but got me in touch with Rick George. And we talked. He was accessible, and he had gone through almost exactly what I was at the time going through. And when he spelled it out for me, he explained why this was happening and what I could do about it. It turned like within days, I was good to go because he knew exactly what was going on with me. And it was, again, I still haven't got to shake Rick George's hand. I hope I run across him at some point. I owe him a debt of gratitude because he was there. I owe Kyle because he was there and said, "Hey, I know who can help you with this issue." And that's the fire service around the country is just like that. Last time we talked, I gave a shout out to Chief Scott Thompson, College Fire
yes,
Department in Texas. He helped me immensely when I took over the mentor program. I did not know Chief Thompson, but I reached out to somebody who did, and they got me in touch with him. And he also has been a mentor himself and has guided me on this program. And so that's the fire service, man. There's so many people around the country that are willing to help.
it really is, and it's an interesting club. Like I mean, and like sometimes I think there's a lot of us in it, but there's not. I mean, it really when you think about the total number of firefighters, there's not a whole lot against the population, right? So even when I started this little endeavor, this podcast, and I start calling some friends, and those people that I've met, and some of those people have big names or whatever, and I've been fortunate, right, to end up in the same room or to have a friend of a friend, and I call them and they say, yeah, 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 but first, Dean, call these three other people, like before, and they're not. It's not that they don't. It's not that that person with the name they don't. They want to be involved, but they also want to bring a whole bunch of other people with them.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, get this. You gotta, yeah, Dean, I'll talk to you, but you got to get this other person first because they're doing some cool stuff. They got a good story. They've got interesting stuff that needs to get out there, and that's how I end up with people like you, right? That's how we end up having a conversation. And
Yeah.
and there's another guy from South Carolina who we're going to get on the show, and same thing. Like it was a friend of a friend, and somebody says, "Hey, you just have to call him." And I called his number and said, "Hey, I know this guy that you know," and he said to call you, and I got this thing going on. And And people love to get those phone calls, and they're easier to make than you think. I mean, or at least for me, they're easier to make than I think. I sometimes think these people that either wrote the book or that whatever, right? That they're not
They're
accessible.
not accessible. Yeah, like they're celebrities, like they're athletes that you can't get
Right.
to. Yeah, right.
Right. And even that, like
Right.
we think celebrities and stuff aren't accessible, and a lot of them. I mean, a lot of them aren't, right? I mean, a
Yeah,
lot of them are, but a
yeah.
lot of them are. Like, so
Generally
even
not in the fire service, man. I'll tell you, again, it brought up social media. There's so many downsides to social media. I don't even like this, but there are many good things fire service wise. I sent Chief John Norman a question on Instagram. He posts things from time to John Norman. I mean, my goodness, a legend. I mean,
right,
like seriously, worked on I think every heavy rescue in FDNY. Work, special, all the special
hmm
ops stuff, all the books he's written and everything. And he messaged me back like, I was just one of the guys. I was so excited when I got when I saw that message thing light up, and he had messaged me back. It's about some USAR stuff a number of years ago, but I was like, John Norman, Chief John Norman
right,
actually
right.
responded. It's like, it's talking to me. And for me, being as a kid who always wanted to be a fireman, that is a celebrity to me. I mean,
hmm
like John Norman is a celebrity. That dude is legendary. And for
Yeah.
him to respond to just some guy in wherever in Tennessee,
Yep.
but he took the time to do that because he cares about the fire service and he cares about advancing it. And none of this stuff is proprietary. We have to pass this info on. It's blue
Right.
collar. We have to you can't hold your ball. You've
hmm
got to get the information out there.
Yep.
The Houston guys last week who were caught in the
hmm
flashover, they're already getting the information out that the only thing that saved them was that they covered their face pieces. They had trained on this in years past. Some other guys got caught in the flashover. They figured out if we all know if that face piece fails, you're done.
And that's the weakest link.
And they covered their face pieces up last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and they survived. And so yesterday we went out in the bay and so let's see what that looks like. But they passed that information on
Yeah.
from Houston across the country because it's meaningful and it could save somebody else's life.
hmm hmm And I think that you're right. None of this stuff is. I mean, none of this stuff's proprietary. It's we're just got to help each other out, share what works, share what doesn't work. Hey, I tried this and
Yeah.
it didn't work. We share all of that stuff, and what works for somebody might not work for you, but it might, and you try it and it works. Great, perfect. And that's why, like when you think about and when you think about the big companies, the firefighters that have companies that do training and stuff, the only thing that makes them a big company or makes them profitable is their ability to package the training in a streamlined way. And that's
Sure.
a good thing because then they can bring it to you and they can bring value and they can maybe get a little buck out of it and that affords them the ability to move it down the road even more. And I get it. Like that's, it's healthy. But very little of it's proprietary. I mean, most of it's just packaged right.
Yeah.
Um,
Unless you're designing certain kinds of nozzles or certain kinds
right.
of tools or whatever, the rest of the stuff is just information. Like you said, it's what we've learned best works here. And this, I screwed
hmm
this up. Don't do this.
hmm I mean, and this is going to go on the internet, so I guess I'm going to have to own what I'm about to say. I don't know that truckies in the city have any better skill than maybe somebody on a truck company in a small town. They get more reps,
More reps.
and that's going to make them better at the skill. But they
Hmm.
might not have better skill. The skill's a skill,
Right.
and it's just about the depth of the skills. How many skills do you know? How many different things can you do with a Halligan? Okay.
Yeah.
But then what, like you said, it comes down to run numbers. And the busier you are, the more opportunity you're going to get to try it and to fail, to try a different way, to train a better way. So it really is about the reps. It's like anything. And I think that's where busy departments have it over small departments or slow departments. It's not about size, not about desire. It's about
Right.
reps. It's about real
Yeah.
world reps. And
Just
that's
get
why,
comfortable doing things. You get comfortable. I
mhm,
mean, again, at this point, I'm extremely comfortable on the radio. I'm extremely comfortable, commanding a scene or whatever. Again, because like you said, it's not because I'm Zane Riggs. It's because I just happen to work in a busy department with a high run volume. I'm just fortunate to be here. But again, it's like, commanding a scene or running a scene or whatever at this point I'm very comfortable doing that just because of reps.
Can they move you to the truck? How does that work? Could they do that? You've been literally on an engine
No, I
room
mean
a fair deal.
yes, I guess they could, but we have a bid system, and our standard companies bid around every 6 months. Our special operations bid once a year, and so whenever there are opening, during that probationary during the bid period,
Hmm.
you just see what's available, and if you want to move, then you place that bid. If you don't, you just stay where you are. So they don't move pieces around, in a way to just move people around. We have a bidding process.
So that seems pretty reasonable. At least for you, right? You can kind of stay where you are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
so what? I'll just ask you a couple more things. What's next? So you're captain, and you're recently promoted. I mean, fair, right? I mean,
Yeah, just this past spring, I promoted to captain, so I'm, still somewhat getting adjusted to that and my role there. Learning what to do, learning not what to do, um, and I'm not really sure. This was my goal. I wanted to be a company officer on a busy engine company. This was my goal, and I have to remind myself sometimes that I achieved it a little earlier than I thought I would, which is I'm extremely grateful for. But to not jump too far ahead, to be in this moment and to enjoy what I wanted because I'm exactly where I wanted to be. And so I think a lot of us are bad about thinking about what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. And there are some benefits to that in the way that when it comes time to promote to test for chief, I will do that for the information and the knowledge, not necessarily because I think I want it, but you do have to figure out where your puzzle pieces are going to go. But
hmm.
I'm also trying to be in the moment right now and realize
Yep.
that this is what I wanted to be doing. And so here I am. And again, I'm grateful and honored to be here.
So as we're wrapping up here, anything you want to talk about we didn't cover?
Again, I'm grateful to all the people that I've reached out to over the years in the fire service across the country, be it again, Chief Scott Thompson, Chief Norman, Kyle Sampson, those people, Adam Mayers, um, people that I've reached out to for advice, for help, or just to guide me. I'm grateful for them. I hope that everybody does that. I hope that everybody, again, passes on this information. And oh man, I think that's about it.
Perfect. Well, this is the Talkin' Fire podcast. My name's Dean Babineau. Our guest today has been Zane Riggs. Our executive producer and engineer is Mac Rice. I hope you join us next time when we'll be talking fire.